We got a new national number one coming out of Hockey East, a major turnaround in the women's conference, then yet another top 10 marquee matchup in non-conference play, and 5 different matchups in the Hockey East weekend series. Stay tuned. It's the Hockey East Game of the Week. Hey, everybody. Glad you're back with us. With Eric Gallanty, I'm Tyler Murray, and it's going to be another wild one across the Hockey East landscape, men's side, women's side, in conference, out of conference, and a new national number one. They're number one, and they're a number one talking point today, Eric. Boston College, I think, well-deserved to be atop of the rankings. They are the Hockey East Game of the Week. You and Jim Conley will be there as they host UMass Lowell at Connie Forum Friday at 7 on Nesson for game one of a home-and-home. What are you thinking?
Yeah, we've talked a little BC, but as you said, they're the number one team in the country, and they are our Nesson game this week. Boston College, as the number one team, they've been really balanced throughout the lineup. That's the thing I think that stands out to me more than anything else. You know, we talk about all of these high skill guys when it comes to BC, but if you look at their lines, 3 of their 4 lines are averaging more than 2 points per game. The USA Kids line has continued to play really well, and I think they've proven that they belong together, not just that they're really impressive together on the offensive side, but they've filled in well for each other defensively. They've been willing to get into it when they need to. The Cutter-Gauthier line, Gauthier once again scored 2 goals on Friday against Michigan State, scored 3 for the weekend. And then that third line, we talked about it last week with Oscar Jelvik. Well, all he did was put up a Hockey East Co-Player of the Week performance after that, Colby Ambrosio, and he will vote. So everybody's scoring. Jacob Fowler was exceptional in game 2 of the series against Michigan State, 43 saves in that game for Boston College. And the other thing that stands out with BC is they are blocking a ton of shots, which maybe doesn't necessarily jump to mind when you think Boston College hockey, but they have 20 blocks in 2 of their last 3 games. They're averaging over 13 blocks per game. We talked with Greg Brown about it last week. He talked about how it was something they identified in the offseason that they wanted to improve on. They've done that in a big way. So that really stands out as well with this Boston College team. So you take the number 1 scoring offense so far in Hockey East against the number 1 scoring defense in Hockey East and UMass Lowell this week. It is amazing. This is shaping up once again to be a classic Lowell year. Both goaltenders right now, Henry Welsh and Luke Pavicic, have .946 saves percentage, 3 games into their season, yes, but still really impressive. They both played extremely well against UConn. Welsh was the Hockey East goalie of the week this past week with the shutout. He actually set a new record for most saves in a shutout in Lowell history, which broke Connor Hellebuck's record. He had 46 saves in the shutout. So anytime you can break a Connor Hellebuck record, that's certainly impressive. So that's number 1. Where is this game going to be played? Is it the sort of high-flying, lot of offense game that Boston College has been playing recently? Or can Lowell play another tight grinder of a game here? Lowell is a big team. They're the second heaviest team by weight in terms of college hockey. So it's a big Lowell team, a physical Lowell team. We know the way they love to play. And then just one more note for you, Tyler, in terms of this game. Lowell has not allowed a first period goal this year. Boston College has scored in the first period in every game so far this year, and they've been able to get out to leads. So how does that factor play into this one? It should be fun. And then Boston College going on the road once again. They haven't been on the road since they beat Quinnipiac in the opener. That'll be game 2 after game 1 tonight at Conti Forum.
I can't wait to see what BC coach Greg Brown does to get his guys ready for what I think is going to be a completely different style of hockey game, as you laid out well. We've seen these top 10 showdowns, high-flying offenses, NHL draft picks everywhere. And Norm Bazin and Lowell, he has built his program off of a culture and a structure, and they still just have Ben Mee in their 1 NHL draft pick. So even though they don't have necessarily the high-end scoring talent, I mean, they are such a tough team to score on. So excited to see how BC kind of solves that puzzle and tries to get their first Hockey East points. I can't believe it's their Hockey East debut, but I want to keep the Chestnut Hill theme going. BC women come into this week ranked number 14. They're hosting the Maine Black Bears Friday on ESPN+. And then on Saturday, that's a Nesson game between BC and Maine. What a turnaround it's been for the Eagles. They started the season 0-4. That was a non-conference play, though. And look who they played. Undefeated number 5 Clarkson, and then undefeated number 1 Wisconsin. None of those teams have lost a game yet. So then BC goes to Hockey East play. They haven't lost in conference action. They're 5-0-1. And it wasn't like they just walked into a Hockey East game and things got easy. They fell behind UConn 2-0 just 8 minutes into their conference opener, came back to win in overtime, and we are seeing a really battle-tested BC women's team. The 3 of their 6 conference games have gone to overtime, 2 wins and a tie for them. Sammy Tabor, Hockey East Rookie of the Week. And then they got 3 of the top 10 scorers in Hockey East, Julia Pellerin, Katie Pine, and Gabby Roy. So exciting stuff right now for BC. But even those 3 top scoring forwards we just mentioned, they're looking up on the league leaderboards to 2 Black Bears, Rahel Ensler and Ida Kupala. She's one of the best goal scorers in the country right now. It's her 5th year with the Black Bears. Kupala has 9 goals in 8 games. She leads the nation among skaters outside the city of Madison, Wisconsin. A hat trick against Stonehill, 2 goals against Providence, and then 2 more against BU. So Kupala has already passed her goal scoring total from a season ago. You have to have 5 sets of eyes on her when she's on the ice. Excited to see how BC handles a pretty high-end talent for the Maine Black Bears to try to stay undefeated so far in women's hockey East play.
Those are our 2 Nesson games of the week, but of course there's a ton of other games to talk about across Hockey East. In the most recent men's poll, Tyler, there were 6 Hockey East teams ranked, including a couple newcomers to the poll, which we'll talk about in a second. And the amazing thing about this week on the men's side is we could talk about every one of these games. They're all interesting. They all have a ton of storylines behind them. Vermont is hosting UConn for 2. We mentioned what UConn did splitting with Lowell last week. Vermont just went into Schneider Arena and took 2 points off Providence in the second game of their weekend. Northeastern and UMass both looking to bounce back a bit from last weekend. They play just a one-off. But the other 2 teams who are now into the polls, best we can tell from the great research team at Hockey East, this is the first time since October of 2011 that New Hampshire and Maine are back in the poll at the same time. 2 of the classics of Hockey East. That's so exciting. And let's see if they can back it up this week, Tyler, because they both have really difficult slates over the weekend.
Yeah, number 15 UNH, number 20 Maine, like you said, it's so great to see. And yeah, 2011 feels like a long time ago. I'll bring you back to 2018, a little more recent. UNH was off to a 5-0 start. They were in the top 10 at one point, leveled off and were number 20 by January 2nd. Maine got hot right at that time, and their first game of January that year, Jeremy Swayman had his first career shutout to beat BU 3-0 on the road. That allowed Maine to bump UNH out of the top 20, and both of those teams finished the year around 500. So I think these 2 teams have a lot more staying power than those 2018 squads that got off to promising starts. I mean, look at Maine. Sophomore Brandon Chabrier is the Hockey East Defender of the Week, had the overtime game winner to upset Quinnipiac. That was his first career game-winning goal. Now remember, Maine was the only team in Hockey East last year without at least 1 NHL draft pick, and they still put together an incredibly promising season. So you've got Ben Barr's culture starting to take hold, and then you add NHL talent like one of their highest draft picks ever, Bradley Nadeau, and they've already got plenty of professional-level talent on the roster. We know that. I mean, Lyndon Breen's become a cult hero up in Orono. So the pieces are really starting to come together for Maine, who had a very gritty weekend against Quinnipiac. They had 1 goal in regulation in both of those games, but still found a way to get that overtime winner on Friday. They're going to have to stay gritty against Merrimack this weekend. Both of these teams have allowed 9 goals all season, and that makes them 2 of the best scoring defenses in Hockey East, right up there with UMass Lowell, as you mentioned, had an incredible weekend against UConn. And for UNH, this is, I think, the first somewhat normal weekend they've had all year. We've had our eye on this Providence home and home for a long time. They'll play their 6th straight home game at the Whittemore Center on Friday. Then they finally go on the road for the first time all year on Saturday down to Schneider Arena. And they've won a lot of high-profile games this season. They deserve to be ranked. But this, again, feels like a little more typical. You know, it's not the home opener versus the number 1 team in the country. It's not a chance to knock off the defending national champions. But it is a rematch of last year's first-round playoff game where Providence eked out a 2-1 overtime win at home against UNH. Now, the Friars, they're ranked number 7, and they've earned it. 5 wins, 1 loss, 1 tie. The wins have been impressive, number 2 and number 5, Denver and Michigan. The losses have been by a razor-thin margin. 1 goal loss to the Wolverines, and then that shootout loss to Vermont. And I think the headliner is a guy who, even as a freshman, Nate Lehman was talking about, like, he's up there with some of his best prospects over the last few years, and Yaroslav Hmelach didn't put up the numbers you would have thought as a freshman compared to how highly his coaching staff talked about him. But now the numbers are coming for Hmelach. The top 3 in Hockey East with 9 points, just 4 off of last season's total. He's got that big body and some really good skating ability to keep piling up a lot of goals, so UNH has to keep an eye on Hmelach this weekend. That's another great matchup as we have just a few minutes left here. Eric, why don't we dive into some short shifts? Final thoughts for this week in Hockey East?
Yeah, let's start with what we told you last week about the Holy Cross women and how well Madison Beck was playing in goal for Holy Cross. Well, she certainly backed it up with a shutout win in overtime against Northeastern. She, once again, for the second week in a row, is the Hockey East goalie of the week. She's up to 10th now nationally in save percentage. So Holy Cross here has picked up a shootout win at Boston College. They've picked up a win against Northeastern in overtime. Doesn't get any easier, though, because they have Vermont on the schedule. So first of all, credit to Holy Cross and how well they've played. Even in the games they've lost, they've all been close. They've all been low scoring, and Madison Beck is a big reason why. Task is a little more difficult this weekend, though, against Vermont. We take a look at this Catamounts team, Tyler, and, you look at where they are. They haven't lost in Hockey East yet so far this year. They're first in Hockey East in scoring offense. Natalie Mlinkova is a huge reason why. She has 5 goals in her last 3 games. Vermont's looked really good. Holy Cross has played extremely well defensively. That's a matchup that I'm looking forward to later today.
Now, you made a great prediction last week with your Holy Cross breakdown. I think it was pretty easy to predict that BU was going to figure some things out with that high-end talent. They're taking on number 3 North Dakota Friday and Saturday at Agganis Arena. That's number 9 versus number 3, 2 games on ESPN Plus at 7 o'clock. And here's the number I'll give you. 20 players in Hockey East are averaging over a point per game. That's a lot. It was just 6 by season's end last year. We'll see if that levels off. But there's only one guy averaging over a point and a half per game, and it happens to be the youngest guy in the country, Macklin Celebrini, 11 points in 6 games. He already has 3 multi-goal games across his first 6 collegiate appearances. So half the time he's out there, he's scoring twice. He's your nation leader with 8 goals. And then I think most importantly, last Saturday against UMass, Celebrini showed that he could score in the clutch. Not 1, but 2 game-tying goals in the third period to force overtime and the eventual shootout win. And BU eventually took 5 out of 6 points from a UMass team that played so well that they moved up a spot in the national rankings despite only picking up 1 out of 6 points. So watch out for the Terriers. But again, UMass, don't be fooled if you think they had a disappointing week or a disappointing effort. They really hung tough for the majority of that weekend series with BU. Now, how about North Dakota? They split a series with number 1 Minnesota 2 weeks ago, won a series over Minnesota State, and they have 11 draft picks. BU has 14, but unlike BU, it's not the high-end scoring that has North Dakota ranked so high. They don't have anybody with more than 7 points through their first 6 games of the season. It's all about defense this year for the Fighting Hawks. They're allowing under 2 goals a game. That's tied for 6th best in the country, and that's going to be a big test for this high-powered BU offense that's averaging 4 goals a game. So maybe a bit of a comparison. You got BC and Lowell against BU and North Dakota. Strength on strength, offense versus defense. So keep an eye on that series too.
And remember, as we've talked a lot about, we're not looking at pairwise yet, but these non-conference games will look potentially really impressive on the resume down the line. So an important weekend for BU. And speaking of BU, what an amazing announcement it was yesterday at the Massachusetts State House as the next Friendship Forest series was announced coming next Thanksgiving in Northern Ireland. Once again, BU will be there, Merrimack will be there, Harvard from the ECAC, and for the first time ever, a Big Ten school with Notre Dame joining those 3 other schools. They'll be in Northern Ireland next Thanksgiving. This is such an amazing event. It's been so much fun to watch. Of course, the Friendship Series will continue on the women's side this January, as we've talked about, with Providence and Princeton playing coming up in a couple of months. But amazing to see another announcement in the Friendship 4. We're going to look forward to that one coming up next Thanksgiving.
It is a good time to be a fan of Hockey East. Again, 3 teams in the top 10, 6 teams in the top 20. And now a lot of head-to-head action in conference play. It should be a lot of fun to watch. We'll talk to you this weekend, and then we'll see you next week on This Week in Hockey East.